Today we're going to show you how to build the absolute best agricultural or livestock fence that money can buy. So you might be looking at this stuff thinking, hey, that's not a wood post, and you'd be right, because you know what? Wood posts, they rot, they split, they crack, they warp. The nice thing about pipe is that it's an engineered product and many times stronger than a wood post could ever be. These posts are 10-foot posts and they're about 5 feet in the ground, or it's a refusal. This ground, as you very well know, if you've watched the channel for a while, probably between 18 inches and 30 inches somewhere, there's a lot of rock. Like, I mean a lot of rock. This soil that you see on top stops, and there's nothing but river rock and sand. These are in there extremely tight. They are not going anywhere. And in fact, you can see how badly we domed some of these posts just trying to even drive them into the ground. But the first step is to build the brace. It all starts with the bracing. The type of bracing that you use is going to make a difference whether or not the fence lasts a lifetime or if you're constantly out there having to fix it and repair it. The typical brace that we like to do for the best ag fence you can is called a ranch brace. And that means that we're going to use this king post right here, and we're going to put a diagonal strut all the way down to the bottom of the next post. And we want this to be fairly wide. If we're too narrow, it just doesn't have the holding power, and we could actually jack this pipe out of the ground, because what we want to do is we want to keep this angle shallow. We want to weld this strut in about 2/3 the way up of the wire. I've already set up a clamp, and that allows me to set this up here kind of at the angle that I want. So the first thing I want to do is kind of mark the center line of my pipe so I can keep my pipe straight up and down. That should work. Then if we come over here, then I think we come over here about that far. What we're going to do is we're going to angle cut this so that it goes like right there. Now we're going to do the same thing exactly opposite. We're going to take just a little bit right here. It actually ends up being a pretty straight cut. There we go. We got a nice saddle we can weld here. Now the next step is we're gonna dig down because we want this strut supported a little bit by the ground. So we're gonna actually weld this in so that you won't even see the pipe at the ground level on this post. And to do that, we're gonna use the bush pig equipment. Coming to us direct from the UK is a whole load of bush pig equipment. So if you're looking for some good spades or root choppers, bush pig is kind of the cat's meow. The cool thing about these is they're all made with hard ox, so they last forever. We had them specifically design a root chopper for us just for all the live oak roots and pine roots and stuff that we run into in Florida. Here, obviously, not a lot of trees, but we do have rocks. And this ground is dry. We have not had a lot of moisture. Might have to use a bar, Dan. You know, those people that say they can dig a hole in 90 seconds live in Florida. In Florida, yeah, no problem. Same conditions don't exist everywhere. All right. That's it right there?
I'm happy right there.
So this we're gonna mark the same way. Yeah, I'll make it cut just a little more off this. And this was pushing against the ground, so as this shoves it in, it's just trying to overcome the ground, so we have all that friction from the ground resistance as well, keeping it from breaking the weld, because we will only be able to put a weld around the top side of this. That one will be able to weld all the way around, but the ground is on the other side, keeping it from breaking free, so we should be more than fine.
Which actually is a benefit because you still have water drainage. So that way you can't freeze and burst your pipe.
If you live in cold climates.
Which can happen.
Now we'll prep the brace at the other end and then pull out the welder, make all this permanent.
So this is called SS40, or high carbon, high tensile pipe. And this is a 4-inch post, that's a 4-inch post. This is a 2 3/8 SS40, WT40. The line posts that you see behind us that we've already pounded are all 1 7/8 SS40. We're using a thinner pipe that has more tensile strength and actually yields a stronger pipe than the same size Schedule 40 product.
And of course, at any time we're welding on galvanized pipe, we want to go back over that with a generous coat of Galv Pro to keep everything sealed and protected from the elements.
So for today's project, we're going to be using the high quality X fence that we stock. We bring this product out of New Zealand along with all of our strain right tools that you see. And I don't know why it is that all the good stuff comes from the UK and Australia and New Zealand, but it just does. So just like we have low carbon and high tensile pipe, we also have low carbon and high tensile wire. The high tensile wire is going to have a greater breaking strength, but it's going to tend to be more brittle and less flexible. The good part about that is that when animals hit it or push on it, it will have a memory, it'll bounce back. It won't stretch out and stay stretched out. It's just not been as popular here in the US, but in the UK or Australia or New Zealand, it's been the standard practice forever. And if you went down there and tried to get those guys to use the garbage low carbon wire that we use here in the States, they'd absolutely pitch a fit. So those of you that have followed the channel for a while know that this is called stripping wire. So what we're trying to do is strip all the vertical or the stay wires from the horizontal or line wires. The easiest way to do that is by taking your Knipex or Strain-Rite or Nippets pliers that we sell on our website, and then cutting this X knot right here. Right on that knot, we can cut that, and that'll allow this stay wire to come free. So we're just gonna strip enough of these. This is very time consuming, very tedious, and also, for the record, a great place to do a time lapse. Now, if you've done it right, this is what you should be left with, which means most of your garbage is still right here. Very little of it has fallen on the ground. Now, you might be asking yourself, why did we go through all that trouble to strip this? Oh, geez, I gotta be careful. Thank goodness for those glasses. But you might be asking yourself, why did we strip all that off rather than cutting it on both sides of the knot and leaving the knot on the wire? Because the video is titled The World's Best Agricultural Fence, not the world's most okayest ag fence. A professional will strip all the knots off. Around your property, if you see this being done, then you know that the person installing your fence is taking the time and doing it right. Again, all I do is I put my pliers on there and I just loosen that knot just a little bit. And if we straighten these are called tension crimps, which is why we have all those. If you straighten those out, they'll pop right off. And that's because the top and bottom are tied on with like a pigtail, just a straight wrap, so. All right, now that we have our pigtails, we're gonna tie this on. This is probably where I'm going to start a fight, but we're gonna use T-clips or T-gripples, and the reason we're gonna do that is because there's very little room in here to work to tie a knot. Can it be done? Yes, absolutely, but the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. We've got adequate strength in the T-gripples to be able to grip the wire, hold the wire tight, and we'll show you all that hopefully coming up. Now, if we were using like a 6-inch stay spacing, there's no reason to do what we're getting ready to do. But with this wire, this is one of the only wires that I would be an advocate for T-clips, just because it is so incredibly difficult to tie. We're gonna start with this one right here. Start right here and get our wire. Oh wow, I stripped way more wire than I needed. I could easily tie our wire knot. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna poke that in there right like that. And I'm gonna wrap it around. You can kind of take that tension crimp out as you slide the T-gripple on if you don't want to do it ahead of time, which is what I tend to do. I'll just maneuver my wire. If you have a clamp handy, you can actually stand your wire up, which makes it a lot easier, and then you're not fighting against yourself. So I'll just stick my T-clip on here, keep it oriented up and down like that, and then poke it through. And this wire is always on top, and then I just rotate it until those clips hook onto my wire. And then that's when I pull it the rest of the way through. And if you want, you can use your 9s or whatever fence pliers you have, just to pop it through. Now the goal is to get all these the same tension so that this stay wire is perfectly plumb with the post. If the stay wire is further over here towards the center of the post, what we'll have is the top wire will get tight and all the top will get tight, and as we go towards the bottom, it'll get looser and looser and looser, and that's not what we want. So I'll go to the grave saying this is the best way to do 2x4 no climb. Tying knots here, the least fun that you can possibly do. I'd rather be an inspector on a YDOT job than tie knots. And that's saying something, because those guys, they stand around a lot. We used to have a game during construction season in Wyoming where my kids would count all the orange hat people standing around on a YDOT project. They're like, look Dad, we counted 5 orange hat people standing around. They weren't doing anything. Now, because I can see you back there wondering, you're probably asking yourself, well, would these work on any other kind of wire? Yeah, they'll work on just about anything. You could use them on welded wire. If you're still sold on welded wire after you watch our videos, you can use them on low carbon wire. You can use them on just about anything. Deer fence, doesn't really matter. I think they cost a little over $1 a piece, and they save us so much time. When time's money, this is the way to go. And we're just gonna snug them up, make sure they're all tensioned correctly. Bam, just like that. I think we're safe. We should probably leave it just like that. No, silly, we gotta cut these things off. If you want a little bit of extra security, you can cut these a little bit long and then take your 9s and maybe bend them back or down. It's not necessary, but you can if you just want that extra security. For us, we just cut them off smooth, right back in there. You can imagine if we had 20 line wires because we were doing game fence. It's another place where I do it is when we're doing 8-foot game fence and we have 20 ties on one post. It's kind of time to maybe think about doing something different, especially for production work. So airports and stuff is another place that we will use T-gripples, not to mention I've got 20 of them I'm counting on. In this case, I've got 13 of them I'm counting on versus a different type of wire where maybe we've only got 5 or 6, depending on how your line wires are spaced. Okay, that's it. To the Batmobile.
Now we've done another whole video on comparing different types of these fence stretchers. We'll link to that at the end of this video. Be sure to check that out if you want to see exactly how this thing works and why it's my favorite.
This is what they call a boundary strainer, also from Strain Right. And we basically use them in place of a come along. This is a better tool. We're gonna do one at the bottom and we'll do another one at the top. Okay, that's pretty good and snug right now. So another way to tie off this wire if we really wanted to is make pigtails and then crimp those pigtails onto the wire so we didn't have to tie into that. And that's what a lot of people that want to tie this wire will do. So I'll show you what that looks like. We just make a bunch of uniform pigtails like this, tie our wire knot, and then we'd have a pigtail here, and then we'd crimp this on maybe right back here. Now that does leave a little bit of a spot here where there's no vertical stay wires. So that's one way of doing that. We get this nice and straight. We could put a crimp in here and probably like either this one or this one, cut this off right here, put a crimp on here, crimp that together, and then that would hold our tension. That's one way to do that. We would need to do this 13 times. Another way of doing that same exact thing is if we wanted to do this, these pigtails just like this, then we could put these on here, these XT1s from Strain Right. And then we're just gonna wrap this and we could do this. Other ways we could do this is we could use a crimp here instead of this, which would hold better, because if we start pulling a lot of tension on these, what's gonna happen is this pigtail back here is gonna start to unwind. This knot won't give, this one will, which is why we use a high tensile wire knot, which looks like that. Another way to do the same thing would be this. We can run this around here. So we could set up a crimp system like this. There's a couple different ways we can crimp these. If you're gonna do a lot of this, then the easy crimp from Strain Right will work fine. Again, on the crimps, it does matter what you use. These are a special crimp with grit inside of them to grip and bite into that high tensile wire. So you can't just use some regular old crimp that you pick up maybe at the store. It isn't gonna work at all. It'll just slip. But we wanna compress all the way down that whole crimp. This takes a little bit of time. Crimps are actually the strongest way to join wire. They're stronger than high tensile wire knots. They're stronger than wrapping the wire. They're stronger than gripples. They're stronger than anything else. This is going to be the strongest way to connect your wire. But it can take a little bit of time, so people don't like that. We've got another tool we'll show you here in just a second that will crimp this, and it'll be a lot faster, but there again, with the speed comes cost. And for using these XT1s, we need to have this tool right here, which is basically just a ratchet.
If you're not somebody who can handle a little bit of tedious work, building farm fence probably isn't for you. It can require a little bit of patience.
So what I'm gonna have my assistant here, Vanna, is crimp some using the standard crimper. This is also known as the Strain Right 3-in-1 Easy Crimp. Link down below if you need one. This is gonna be much, much cheaper than the Pro Crimp that we're gonna show you next, but it does get the job done. It just takes a lot more muscle and a lot more time. Now, Dan, are you done having fun, or would you like to show them?
Yeah, I'm done.
As mentioned before, you want to make sure that entire sleeve is crimped. So it takes about 3 passes to get it all crimped. Now that takes a lot of power, and we're going to show you now the easy way to do that. The difference between the two tools, a couple $1,000 actually. But if you notice, that crimped it with 0 effort much, much faster. So if you're a fence builder in the business of doing this stuff, you probably want to pick one of these up from us. Otherwise, if you're just a do-it-yourselfer, or maybe you've got some livestock and you want to fence your place, probably stick with the hand crimpers. It's going to be much more cost-effective for your project.
The fence connoisseur.
Yeah, this is definitely for the connoisseur.
The connoisseur.
It does a much nicer job with way less effort. It's kind of like the difference between stick ties and easy twist ties. All right, so when you're all done, if you do this right, we wanted to do it like this, and we just got off on our pattern. Really what we wanted to do is stagger these just a little bit and then have them all right here. So this is what you're gonna have. You're not gonna have any stay wires right here. So if that's a problem for you, you probably want to use the T-clips. But with the T-gripples on short runs, you will never, ever, ever get that tight without using a strainer like this. It's almost going to be impossible because you need to be able to pull each line wire. And in that case, we wouldn't even use a wedge board. We'd just use these ratchet tensioners to take up that slack. And then this one, we screwed up, got this one long, so technically what we need to do would be to shorten this one up so that we're not running into the stay wire. There you go, we screw up. Sometimes we have to do things over again too.
Don't tell
Because
him
we
that.
goof. No, we are not perfect, Dan.
No.
Everybody needs to know.
Okay, fine.
So you can see here we don't have quite as much tension. Make some micro adjustments. And because we used the ratchet strainers, we lost the 0 tension on the rest of this fence. Yeah. So you can see the kind of deflection. There's 10 feet. We put these posts 10 feet on center. And that is probably overkill. You could get away with 16 to 20 feet if you had a lower pressure area like you were fencing a pasture. Not going to be a problem at all. This one is definitely overkill, but we said we were going to build the best fence. We weren't kidding. Some other things to note about this is that because we used all pipe, we don't have any rusting or rot to worry about. Even in the ground, rust and rot occur right where there's moisture. It has to have oxygen to be able to do that. Down in the ground, it's not going to rust. Our biggest place for rust is going to be right at grade, just a little bit above and a little bit below, where there's oxygen in the environment. We're going to finish tying this up, and what we're going to do to tie this is we're going to use the easy twist ties that you know and love so well. These go on really easy. We've got ties all the way from 1 3/8 all the way up to 4" for all kinds of foot posts, as well as the T-post ties if you're still dead set on using T-posts. But for the best fence, if you want a really good fence, I would suggest using galvanized posts, SS40, either 1 7/8 or 2 3/8 for just an absolutely almost bulletproof fence. If we could cut these off, we could add caps, not add caps. Sometimes you have to cut them to get the caps on because they're mushroomed a little bit from driving them. Caps are not essential. I think what a lot of people don't realize, there's a myth about caps, and that is that they keep the water out, but they don't keep the water out because condensation will still get in there. And even with caps on the fence, we have pulled fence posts that were plumb full of water, bottom to top, all the way full. So caps, no caps, it's up to you. It's not gonna make any difference. Water, trust me, will still get in there. Another thing to note is that because we stretched this the correct way now, all of our stay wires are perfectly straight up and down again. Yeah, that's a tight fence right there. That is what a fence should look like. That's going nowhere. So you can actually kick these over because they want to go to the center of the post. All these knots want to spin anyhow, right to the center, because that's where all this pull is coming from. So what do you think, Dan? The best ag fence, woven wire fence, farm fence, cattle fence, sheep fence, goat fence, deer fence, dog fence, kid fence. This could be used for a lot of things, and it would be very, very hard to build something stronger and tougher than this. This is it. I would never ever use barbed wire or smooth wire. I would use nothing but net wire because it's so much better in the technology. There's a lot of metallurgy that goes into this stuff to make a really good fence. Our pipe is galvanized, our wire is galvanized, so if you think, hey, that pipe's never gonna last, well, so's the wire then, because the wire is a fraction of the thickness of the pipe, and it's gonna take a lot longer to rust through this pipe than it is this wire. The best ag fence ever? We'll let you be the judge. Now, if you're interested in something a little cheaper and a little faster to build, check out this video right over here where we show you an economical way to build a good, sturdy, strong fence without a whole bunch of backbreaking work and still get a good result. I'm Mark with SWI here in Wyoming.
I'm Dan with SWI. We are Wyoming's Fence and Gate Company.
And we hope you have a good dang day.